Welcome to the Elusive Truth with Rich and sometimes Larry. On today's show, we have a lot to talk about. I think we're going to be going over those pesky balloons, those weather balloons, or Chinese balloons, or spy balloons, whatever you want to call them. First, I'm going to play you two quick little shorts that happen to come up that have nothing to do with the balloons and the alien spacecraft or whatever is out there that the United States government is shooting down. But anyway, we're going to start off with the problem of the woke culture. This is the Black Consultant 2429. Have a listen.
I am so tired of talking about woke culture. The only way to deal with the problem of racism is to treat people on the content of their character and nothing else. And the fact that woke culture seeks to overturn that is a new form of racism that we must all oppose. And the only thing that wokeness has to offer in exchange is to brainwash bright young minds like you to believe that you are victims, to believe that you have no agency, to believe that what you must do to improve the world is to complain, is to protest, is to throw soup on paintings. We sit on this side of the house because we know that the way to improve the world is to work, is to create, it is to build. And the problem with woke culture is that it's trained too many young minds like yours to forget about that. Thank you very much.
Amen to this.
Wow, somebody speaking some common sense. Kind of rare these days. Now for my next little snippet here, it's actually Russell Brand, but apparently he must have a new channel called Ponder Pond. And it's fine to say it now from Newsweek. And again, you'll never hear this anywhere else because this goes against the narrative completely that we've been shoved down our throats for past 3 years. Have a listen.
This is from that conspiracy theorist journal, Newsweek. And in it, a madcap conspiracy theorist, Kevin Bass, MD, PhD student at medical school in Texas. He's in his 7th year. Sorry, I get confused when it's not convenient and I sometimes jumble those terms up. As a medical student and researcher, I staunchly supported the efforts of the public health authorities when it came to COVID-19. I believe that the authorities responded to the largest public health crisis of our lives with compassion, diligence and scientific expertise. I was wrong. We in the scientific community were wrong and it cost lives. Do you remember all the times you said, I wish that they would just have an open conversation. I wish they would admit when they were wrong. I wish that they would admit that following the science is sometimes difficult because the science is a subset of corporatist interests. Natural immunity, vitamin D, none of those things were being discussed. Why? What was being discussed? Is there anything about what was being discussed and suggested that ties it into another narrative? Profitable? I can see now that the scientific community, from the CDC to the WHO to the FDA and their representatives, repeatedly overstated the evidence and misled the public about its own views and policies. All of these were scientific mistakes at the time, not in hindsight. Amazingly, some of these obfuscations continue to the present day. But perhaps more important than any individual error was how inherently flawed the overall approach of the scientific community was and continues to be. It was flawed in a way that undermined its efficacy and resulted in thousands, if not millions, of preventable deaths. Hold on a minute, it's not like we're seeing excess deaths everywhere, so... We created policy based on our preferences, then justified it using data. And then we portrayed those opposing our efforts as misguided, ignorant, selfish, and evil. If you were saying that at the time, well done. I'm afraid that's all it's going to be. There's no medal or anything like that. It's just well done. And perhaps just bear that in mind going forward. Also, good luck getting your small business back on track because that money's gone to Amazon now. What a coincidence.
Can you believe that? Wow. That's exactly what we were talking about. We were not allowed to question anything. They told us we need to take the jab, and that's it. Final. Nothing else mattered. The natural immunity, all that stuff, hogwash. Now we're starting to see the real truth come out 3 years later. I guess better late than never, but it's starting, folks. Keep your ears and eyes open. Now for my next piece, you won't believe it. Larry called, and he has a snippet of information straight from, well, apparently it is the commander-in-chief, not Biden, and this is through a guy that gets messages from him. But I'm going to play you a few minutes of it, and you're going to hear from Larry. You won't believe it, but here it is. Have a listen.
This is now only the second time that I'm reading this, so this may be a little out of sorts for me. but I'm going to give it my best shot. My fellow Americans, I come to you tonight during America's biggest game as a humbled American citizen, duly elected President of the United States of America, and supporter of freedom and equality for all people of our nation and many nations abroad. Over the coming days and weeks, you will experience an unprecedented series of events that will rock the very foundation of everything we have ever known. At times during these days and weeks, messages will be received on your television sets, smartphones, including Apple, Android, and others, tablets, laptops, personal computers, smartwatches, and other strategic devices available to the private sector as well as government agencies worldwide. These messages will not be avoidable, and very close attention should be paid to the instructions of which the messages contain. For the citizens of the United States, our country has been attacked by a radical left group of extremists, part of a global terrorist network of politicians, businessmen, high-ranking government officials, intelligence agencies, and dangerous criminals, collectively known as the Cabal. For years, these extremists have flaunted their wealth, power, and technology in the face of all human beings, most of which are struggling to put food on their table and a roof over their head. They have infiltrated every level of government, big tech, big pharma, and have even made their way to the mainstream media, becoming some of the most trusted voices that we have ever known. Over the past several months, as part of a global military alliance with other world leaders, many of these extremists have been detained, arrested, or otherwise captured during a strategic military operation known only by one word: extract. Many of these individuals are now awaiting military trial at several black sites across the world. The crimes committed by this group amount to the worst crimes our world has ever seen. It cannot quite be put into words how many people have suffered at the hands of this satanic cult. Our world has forever changed because of these atrocities. Although we cannot change the past, we can certainly change the future and the outlook for humanity. Together, standing united and strong, our global military alliance has made very strong steps to change the trajectory of humanity's future. This operation continues as we speak, and we will not rest until it is complete. My message tonight is one of calmness, peace, and God has cast his good grace over our efforts. Please remain calm throughout this process and follow any instructions you were given through the messaging system described earlier in this announcement. For God, country, and the future of humanity, I thank you for your attention and respect.
Is that it, Gary?
No, he's going to talk right now again. He's taking a deep breath.
I've been wanting to hear those words for a long time. And I think it's unfortunate that first time I heard those words were from a encrypted message and not from the mouth of our true commander-in-chief. Obviously, this message was meant to be read during the Super Bowl. And when I say, I'm sorry, guys, I'm just trying to collect myself. That's reading it the second time is more powerful than the first. I say that because the very first line of the message says, during America's biggest game. I can't imagine that it would have been for any other game, especially because it was supposed to be by week's end. Upon reading the message, my first thoughts were, yes, finally, yes. Then I realized that he didn't read it. And when I realized he didn't read it, I sort of got sad again, right? Because if you hear Donald Trump read this during the Super Bowl, you, especially if you're one of us, you are high-fiving whoever. But then you realize that it wasn't read. It didn't happen. The message didn't come. And earlier today, when I received this transcript, I keep calling it a transcript, but I guess it's more of a written statement. Now, to me, let me continue my thought. When I first got it, all I got was the letter. I didn't get any other explanation. I got nothing else. All I got was an encrypted attachment with what I just read to you. So I didn't get permission to. This is what Carrie said when I told her about it. I didn't get permission to read it, but my answer to that is, well, I got it from.
Hey there. You want me to keep playing anymore?
Oh, wow. So I was trying to figure out what's going on. That's
I
wild.
can play a little more, but I was just going to give you the letter itself, and then he's going to talk about, other stuff. I haven't even listened to it yet. You're the first person I called, and I wanted to be like, holy shit, Rich has to know this. And in the beginning, he says it's going to rock our world, like our foundation, like we've never been rocked before. And we know all this, though. We know this what we've been talking about, Rich.
Yeah, it's definitely interesting. Very amazing.
Yeah, so anyhow, I didn't want to hold you up on your birthday and stuff, but I'm just really excited what's about to come down. And he said, as Trump said, during the next coming weeks.
Awesome. Very good. Very good. It's a good hearing from you and good giving this tidbit of information out.
Yes, and now you can know that anything you're saying of what you just heard and maybe write down or whatever is verbatim.
No, that's definitely interesting. Because I haven't heard that at all, and I just got done doing a whole bunch of clips on the frickin' Chinese balloons, and
you won't hear this much. Other than anyone else that comes out and says this is gonna have watched this podcast and claim it's theirs.
I've never heard anything about it. You're the first to bring it up, and
so we'll see how many of these people tomorrow are going to start talking about this. It's going to be interesting that he got it first.
Yeah, definitely. Well, let's see if that even lets it get out, because something like this.
Oh no, it's going to come out because he's got too big a following. This ain't the Rich and Larry show with 65 people.
Exactly. Yeah, but we game one or two people every time, so that's all we can ask for.
But didn't you find that quite interesting?
I wasn't prepared for it. I didn't know what was going to say.
I know you wasn't, man. I'm like, holy you're the first person I wanted to call with real intel.
And we got it on tape, so
I know.
We'll just have to go through a little bit of the editing, block out some of that small, those intermissions between his voice.
Yeah. Reading it again for you people.
Yeah.
And he touched by it, you could tell.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely.
And we all are after listening to that. How was your feeling when you heard that?
I'm still trying to dissect it. I got to go back and play it again, like he said, to really hear it.
The second time, you're going to be like, wow.
Yeah, there's a lot he says, and you have to dissect it.
Yep. And I couldn't write it down, and if I was a fast writer, I could write, and then stop the scene and write it, and stop and write and stop and write and stop. You know what I mean?
Yes.
That'd be the only way to get it down in print. He said, I like when he said, the word that they use is, about these many's of the global people that have been detained, captured, and arrested. We just say one word, extract. Meaning they've been plucked out, captured, arrested, and detained. They've all been extracted.
Very nice. Very nice.
Oh. And he said of military trials across the world. So, the ones they captured in Europe will be trialed there. A lot will be brought to Guantanamo. They could be in ships. This is a global. And he said there's going to be events in the upcoming weeks.
Can't wait. Looking forward to it.
Yeah, so we know, as he said towards the end, as Trump said, stay calm. Don't buy into the fear and bullshit, because the military is in control.
All right. Something to look forward to.
He didn't say those words, but I know that's what he meant when he said stay calm and don't worry. They've planned it for minimal collateral damage to the citizens of the world by having to take down the bad guys. They don't want the citizens to pay the price.
Well, we've already paid a big enough price for all this.
Yes, we have paid the price.
We're still paying it right now. And,
Well, it's everybody just feeding the cabal everything they've earned. Yeah, it's changing.
Good. Very good. Well, I'm glad you
got a birthday present there, Rich.
Yep. No, I'm glad you called in and we made contact, and I'm glad you're feeling better right now. I hope you keep up the good progress. Seriously. And we're going to we got a lot more to talk about.
And yes, we do. And, Jeannie still thinks we're a little bit out there, but she can't, she doesn't deny it. She just goes, yeah. She laughs sometimes. Yeah, you guys. But she still believes us, I think.
Well, she's learning, and she's opening her eyes and her mind to listening to everything.
I know she is, and now she's going to be, you guys, you've been right all along. And I don't care about being right. I just want to have everyone that I know and like to be awakened.
Yes.
And let them do their own journey.
Yeah, you have to. You have to do it yourself. Otherwise, you won't believe it.
I know. So this is the kickoff, my friend. Actually, we're in the game has begun. We're in it.
Nice, very nice.
Yeah, man, I am just elated. You have a happy birthday, Rich.
Well, thank you very much, my friend. Definitely. All right, my friend.
No worries.
Well, we'll be in touch real soon because we got a lot more to talk about. I mean, this is just the tip of the iceberg. And now we have the clock ticking, so let's hope for the best.
Oh, yeah. I'll keep you going here, Phil. Phil. Phil was the guy I got the info from.
All right, my friend. You take care.
All right.
Have a good evening, and I'll talk to you tomorrow.
Thanks, Rich.
All right. See ya.
You too.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Well, can you believe it? Larry was actually on the show, and he had some intel. Quite unbelievable, but I hope it's true because we need something to go in our favor. We need the good to prevail over this evil that's happening all around us. Wow. Again, Larry on the show. He is doing much better. So we'll have another show with him coming up shortly. Anyway, to get back on track, my goodness, we've had these crazy stories of Chinese balloons, weather balloons, spy balloons, flying all over the place, and now we're shooting them down. And then apparently there's other objects that we're shooting down as well. A lot of craziness has been going on. And here, have a listen to yourself. I have over an hour of this stuff on YouTube. There's 10 hours of footage of all this craziness going on. Right in the middle of my doing the show, Larry did just happen to call in, and he had his own intel. But with that, let's get started with Reuters. China warns U.S. of countermeasures in the balloon scandal. Check this out. It's getting crazy.
after the U.S. military's recent takedown of what it called a Chinese spy balloon in U.S. airspace. China on Wednesday threatened to retaliate against U.S. entities in an escalating diplomatic spat. Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesperson Wang Wenbing.
China has repeatedly explained the situation to the U.S., but the U.S. has abused force and overreacted to escalate the situation, and used this as a pretext to illegally sanction Chinese enterprises and institutions, to which China resolutely opposes and will take countermeasures against the relevant U.S. entities that harm China's sovereignty and security.
Washington and Beijing are locked in a tussle over flying objects after the U.S. military this month shot down what it called a Chinese spy balloon over the coast of South Carolina. Beijing says its balloon was a civilian research vessel, mistakenly blown off course, and that Washington overreacted. This week, China countered that U.S. balloons had flown over its airspace without permission more than 10 times in the last year, a claim Washington denies. U.S. Deputy Secretary of State Wendy Sherman told an audience at a Brookings Institute event on Wednesday that the accusation is false.
They have now said that there have been a gazillion balloons by the U.S. over China. That is absolutely not true. There are no U.S. government balloons over China, period. John Kirby, the NSC spokesperson, said that publicly.
Washington has added 6 Chinese entities connected to Beijing's suspected surveillance balloon program to an export blacklist, angering the Chinese. The balloon dispute has delayed efforts by both sides to mend relations, although U.S. President Joe Biden has also said that he does not believe ties between the two countries were weakened by the incident. And sources have said that U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken, who postponed a planned trip to Beijing over the balloon, is considering meeting China's top diplomat in Munich this week.
Getting more information.
So many more questions about these balloons and what's really going on, because apparently this is what the government wants us to know, and it's probably some type of, hey, look at this while we're doing this, distracting you with other stories. Next, I have a piece from Inside Edition. U.S. shoots down Chinese balloon. Have a listen.
Talk about the catch of the day. It's the Chinese spy balloon found by the U.S. Navy.
The U.S. Navy coming in with the China balloon.
You can see balloon fabric on the boat deck and boxes being unloaded on the dock. The balloon was discovered off North Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. Debris from the shoot-down lies scattered across 7 miles.
Some of it's intact. They'll be able to easily determine what it was and what it was used for.
We're learning more about the stunning moment the spy balloon was shot out of the sky.
Break 1, blast 1, that is a big kill.
We have eyes on the balloon falling.
Hundreds on the ground watch the Top Gun drama unfold.
That plane just had a strike.
The moment of impact was captured by photographer John Snyder.
I walked out to the driveway in the front yard and I was like, oh, hey, there's the balloon.
Minutes after he set up his camera, the missile struck.
I knew I had got the shot. That's basically all it was, being in the right place at the right time.
This extraordinary image shows the payload of solar panels and spy equipment actually falling from the sky. It's the first time an aircraft has been shot down over U.S. territory since World War II. Now the recovered equipment may be an intelligence treasure trove for the U.S.
I pretty much think that was what they call a fluff piece. It really didn't give you much information, and it glorified everything. Kind of strange. But anyway, we're going to go on to the horse's mouth. John Kirby. White House gives latest details on mysterious objects shot down by U.S. military. Now we're coming directly from what United States government is telling us, the world, what's going on. Have a listen.
When President Biden came into office, he directed the U.S. intelligence community to do a broad assessment of Chinese intelligence capabilities and to ensure that we were working to detect and to protect against them. I think for reasons that you will all understand, we cannot publicly go into many details about how we discover and counteract foreign intelligence collection efforts, because much of what we have done and are doing is, of course, sensitive. But we were able to determine that China has a high-altitude balloon program for intelligence collection that's connected to the People's Liberation Army. It was operating during the previous administration, but they did not detect it. We detected it. We tracked it. And we have been carefully studying it to learn as much as we can. We know that these PRC surveillance balloons have crossed over dozens of countries on multiple continents around the world, including some of our closest allies and partners. We assessed that at this time, these balloons have provided limited additive capabilities to the PRC's other intelligence platforms used over the United States. But in the future, if the PRC continues to advance this technology, it certainly could become more valuable to them. The President also instructed the intelligence community to take a broad look at the phenomenon of unidentified aerial objects. Indeed, President Biden conducted the first ever daily intelligence briefing session devoted to this phenomenon back in June of 2021. He was briefed that this is not just an issue for the United States, but one for the rest of the world. And as I said, our friends and our partners are dealing with this as well. We worked on a bipartisan basis to stand up an office at the Pentagon to study this, in partnership with the intelligence community, academic institutions, and the private sector. These unidentified aerial phenomena have been reported for many years without explanation or deep examination by the government. President Biden has changed all that. We are finally trying to understand them better. Now, in light of the Chinese balloon program and this recent incursion into our airspace, the United States and Canada, through NORAD, have been more closely scrutinizing that airspace, including enhancing our radar capabilities, which, as the commander of NORTHCOM and NORAD, General Van Herk, said just last night, may at least partially explain the increase in the objects that have been detected. Slow-moving objects at high altitude with a small radar cross-section are difficult to detect on radar. Even objects the size of the Chinese spy balloon, which had a payload the size of roughly 3 school buses, were not picked up by previous administrations or other countries. We also know that a range of entities, including countries, companies, research, and academic organizations, operate objects at these altitudes for purposes that are not nefarious at all, including scientific research. That said, because we have not yet been able to definitively assess what these most recent objects are, we acted out of an abundance of caution to protect the security, our interest, and flight safety. In Saturday's case, we acted in consultation with the Canadian government, the President speaking personally with Prime Minister Trudeau. The spy balloon was, of course, different because we knew precisely where that was. As we have said, we do not assess that these most recent objects posed any direct threat to people on the ground, and we are laser focused on confirming their nature and purpose, including through intensive efforts to collect debris in the remote locations where they have fallen. In each instance, we have followed the same basic course. We assessed whether they posed any kinetic threat to people on the ground. They did not. We assessed whether they were sending any communication signals. We detected none. We looked to see whether they were maneuvering or had any propulsion capabilities. We saw no signs of that. And we made sure to determine whether or not they were manned. They were not. We did, however, assess that their altitudes were considerably lower than the Chinese high-altitude balloon and did pose a threat to civilian commercial air traffic. And while we have no specific reason to suspect that they were conducting surveillance of any kind, we couldn't rule that out. That is why the President, at the recommendation of the Secretary of Defense, the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, and the NORTHCOM NORAD commander, gave the order to shoot them down. These missions were completed successfully and safely. Efforts are actively underway right now at all sites to find what is left of those objects so that we can better understand and communicate with the American people what they are. I think it's important to remind the objects in Alaska and Canada are in pretty remote terrain, ice and wilderness, all of that making it difficult to find them in winter weather. The object over Lake Huron now lies in what is probably very deep water. So outside of recovery operations, what are we doing? Well, first, we are continuing to monitor. There are no active tracks today, but the professionals at NORAD will continue to do their important work. Secondly, we are consulting with allies and partners on the challenge of identified aerial phenomenon and how we can all work together to deal with that challenge. The President has directed the Secretary of State, Secretary of Defense, and the Director of National Intelligence to engage with their relevant counterparts to share information and to try to gain their perspectives as well. Again, this is an issue that affects everybody around the world. Third, we will continue to brief members of Congress and relevant state leadership on what we are doing and what we learn. The President has made this a very top priority. We have, over the course of just the last few days, and certainly over the course of last week, reached out to inform and brief members of Congress and relevant state governors of the operations that we were conducting and of the recovery operations that are underway. We've also kept Congress briefed generally on this issue of Chinese surveillance balloons, including classified briefings last August. And last week, administration officials provided classified briefings for all senators and all members of the House of Representatives on the PRC surveillance balloon. We fully expect and anticipate and support the ability to continue these briefings in the days ahead. And fourth, the President, through his National Security Advisor, has today directed an interagency team to study the broader policy implications for detection, analysis, and disposition of unidentified aerial objects that pose either safety or security risks. Every element of the government will redouble their efforts to understand and mitigate these events. And I'm happy to take some questions.
John, if the objects don't pose a military threat and they don't pose a threat to anybody on the ground, why shoot them down? Particularly because the military is routinely monitoring radar blips and such.
I kind of covered that in the opening statement. Two real reasons here. First, there was a very real potential risk to civilian air traffic. The one shot down on yesterday was about 20,000 feet, and the two shot down Friday and Saturday were at about 40,000 feet. And as you know, transcontinental air traffic is roughly around 30,000 feet. It depends, of course, on weather. And so because we assessed that they weren't manned and weren't being controlled, therefore left to atmospheric conditions, the real risk to safety of flight was a problem. The second purpose, and I talked about this earlier too, was even though we had no indications that any of these three objects were surveilling, we couldn't rule that out. And so you want to err on the side of safety here in terms of protecting our national security interests, and the fact that these objects could have and likely did at some point in their path transit over potential military sites of ours or sensitive sites. So again, out of an abundance of caution for those two reasons, the President, with the recommendation of his military leaders, directed them to be taken down.
Because it's so unprecedented, should the public be hearing from the President directly on this?
We have been, I think, as transparent as we can be. I won't speak for the President's personal speaking schedule, but I mean, he has been deeply engaged in every one of these decisions. He's been kept informed, including as of this morning, on what's going on with recovery efforts, and he's very much staying on top of the issue and directing his team to make sure we are properly consulting and briefing not just members of Congress but state leaders as well. And of course, we're also doing what we can in the public sphere.
I was wondering too why the President wasn't speaking about this, especially from what I understand, one balloon and three more objects, but the objects aren't balloons. I'm not quite sure what happened there. And it really sounded so scripted. They didn't really tell you anything. We're going to go to a guy that will tell us what he knows, and that's Facts Matter with Roman Balmakov. This is what the U.S. military found on a Chinese balloon, is the piece.
A top U.S. general within the Air Force just revealed that the Chinese spy balloon might have contained explosives inside of it in order to be able to self-destruct should it ever get compromised. Furthermore, now that the balloon has been shot down out of the sky and the remnants of it recovered, we know much more about it. such as its dimensions, its payload, as well as its functionalities. Although, to be frank, what you and me, the common plebes, get to know is very likely a tiny fraction of what the government knows, and we only know whatever they're willing to tell us. Regardless, let me break down for you what we have been told thus far, what's been revealed thus far after the U.S. Navy and U.S. Coast Guard collected the debris from the Atlantic Ocean right there off the coast of North Carolina. To start with, the balloon itself weighed over 2,000 pounds and was about as tall as a 20-story building, which is approximately 200 feet. Then, the actual payload beneath the balloon was about as long as a regional airplane, and it consisted of several hundred feet of mostly glass solar panels. Then, right there in the middle, it was equipped with a super high-definition surveillance camera, which allowed it to capture images of whatever it was floating over. The U.S. Air Force general then mentioned that the balloon was potentially carrying a self-destruct mechanism, although during that press conference, he did stop short of 100% confirming whether or not there were actually explosives on board. Furthermore, the Chinese balloon also had several antennas with priority sensors on them, which allowed it to intercept communication signals in the areas that it was flying over. And of course, the areas that it was flying over, well, they happen to include an American nuclear base over in Montana, the U.S. Strategic Command Center in Nebraska, as well as another one of our military bases over in Missouri, which happen to house several of our nuclear bombers. And the best part of all this is that according to a statement that was released by U.S. intelligence officials just yesterday, the American government knew about this balloon and was apparently tracking it ever since it took off from the southern coast of China. Let me repeat that. According to a statement that was released just yesterday, U.S. intelligence officials claim to have been tracking this Chinese balloon ever since it took off from Hainan Island in the southern coast of China. Then, in that same statement, the U.S. officials went on to say that they were tracking the balloon as it was going eastwards towards Guam and Hawaii before it suddenly made an unexpected move north towards Alaska. And they conceded, in their statement at least, that this change in direction might have indeed been an accident. Quote, "Given the path, it's possible that the balloon was blown off course by weather, but U.S. officials said that once it came south over the continental United States, it was being controlled by China." Meaning that according to the statement at least, these U.S. intelligence officials are claiming that the spy balloon was likely going to Guam and Hawaii, but was instead blown off course to Alaska. But once in Alaska, the Chinese military, again, apparently regained control of it and made the best of that situation and did what they did. However, I believe it's important to view this type of statement from the U.S. government critically, with a healthy dose of skepticism. Because right now, the Biden administration has two very important objectives. The first is to deter China from running more of these balloon operations, and the second is to give them a diplomatic way out so that they can save face and the diplomatic relations between the two countries can get reestablished. And so, a statement from unnamed U.S. officials, which happens to align perfectly with these two goals, should be viewed skeptically. Because their statement is essentially claiming that, for one, we knew all along about this balloon because our surveillance capabilities are so great, and therefore there's no way that China can fly one of these balloons without us knowing. And secondly, that it might have indeed blown off course by the weather, which would align perfectly with what the Chinese regime has been saying all along. Now, this might all be true. However, it might also not be true, given how it's just so conveniently aligned with what the Biden administration is trying to achieve. Especially when you consider the fact that on the very same day that this U.S. intelligence statement was released, Kamala Harris was giving an interview to Politico where she said that the Chinese spy balloon episode should not impact U.S.-China relations. Quote, Kamala Harris said the recent U.S. downing of a Chinese surveillance balloon over American waters should not have an impact on diplomatic relations between the two global superpowers. She's then quoted as saying this, quote, "I don't think so. No, we see competition, but not conflict or confrontation." And so you can make up your own mind as to the veracity of this U.S. intelligence statement. However, I will mention this. If it's true that the U.S. knew about this balloon well before it reached Alaska, well, that really only opens up a lot more questions. For one, why didn't they do anything about it? Secondly, why did they not inform their Canadian counterparts, who apparently had no idea what was going on? What would have happened if no one in Montana saw the balloon in the sky? Would the U.S. government just keep the whole thing under wraps and not tell anyone about it? And then lastly, if we knew about this balloon all along, and if even further, we knew about the Chinese Communist Party's balloon program for several years now, why is it that the Biden administration is only taking action now? Because you see, last Friday, the Biden administration put 6 different Chinese groups who are suspected of being connected to China's spy balloon program on what's known as the entities list, meaning that they're barred from doing any business or receiving any money from people in the U.S., people or entities in the U.S., which of course sounds like a reasonable action to take, but it just raises the question. If we knew about this program for so long, if we knew about this Chinese balloon program for several years, why was this action only taken now? Of course, I don't speculate about these things, but I think it's a good question to ask. And to me, it brings to mind the old adage of the tail wagging the dog. Does the media in this country report on what the government does, or does the government do whatever it is that the media decides to highlight? And frankly, in this case, it seems to be the latter, that because this incident became national news, the Biden administration had to take action. But again, that's just pure speculation on my part. You can make your own decision on what actually happened here. Regardless, after shooting down the Chinese spy balloon off the coast of North Carolina, suddenly there seems to be an endless number of other objects that the Air Force has been shooting out of the sky. For instance, last Friday, they shot down something that was as big as a car flying over the northeastern part of Alaska. Then, the very next day, the U.S. Air Force flew into Canada to shoot down another unidentified object flying over the Yukon Territory. That target so far has only been described as a small cylindrical object. Then, the very next day, which was Super Bowl Sunday, the U.S. Air Force once again scrambled their jets to shoot down a fourth octagonal object over the Great Lakes in the state of Michigan, specifically over Lake Huron. That means that within the span of 8 days, the U.S. Air Force shot down 4 different targets, 1 balloon, and 3 other objects which are yet to be identified. And they remain unidentified to this very day. In fact, the latest update, which came 2 days ago, had the Pentagon spokesman, Mr. John Kirby, saying this, quote, "There's no question in our minds that the Chinese balloon was designed to surveil, that it was an intelligence asset. We knew exactly what that thing was. These other 3 didn't have propulsion, they weren't being maneuvered, they were basically being driven by the wind. We don't know for sure whether they had a surveillance aspect to them, but we can't rule it out." And so that's where we currently stand. No one knows exactly what these mystery objects were, but the legacy news outlets in this country now have something interesting to focus on, rather than covering, let's say, the giant chemical fire that's devastating the eastern part of Ohio.
I'm amazed that he basically just gives you facts. And then when he has an opinion, he lets you know it's an opinion. So you don't get confused and believe what the mindless media has been pushing for a long time. Again, very interesting, and he gave us more information than the other 3 pieces I gave you. Now let's get some more information on those mysterious objects other than the balloon. Here we have CNN. Here's what the pilots have to say about those mysterious objects that they apparently shot down in Alaska. CNN, of all people.
New this hour, dramatic new details about the unidentified object shot down by fighter jets just miles off the coast of Alaska yesterday. Unlike the Chinese spy balloon shot down last Saturday, this object demanded more immediate action yesterday. Officials say it was flying much lower at 40,000 feet, making it a dangerous potential threat to civilian aircraft. But now we are learning that U.S. military pilots who approached the craft have given conflicting accounts of what they saw. This new reporting coming in now from CNN national security reporter Natasha Bertrand. Natasha, so this is interesting. This is kind of unusual that these pilots saw different things, and that is sort of, I guess, adding to the mystery of all this.
Yeah, not even the pilots apparently were really able to identify what they saw. And just to take you back for a sec, on Thursday, the U.S. defense officials sent F-35 fighter jets up to try to figure out what this object was that was flying around near Alaska. Those pilots, we have learned, have given very conflicting accounts of what they actually experienced, with some pilots saying that the object interfered with the plane's sensors, other pilots saying that they didn't really experience that, other pilots saying that when they looked at the object, they could identify no identifiable propulsion system, and they did not know how it was actually staying in the air, cruising at that altitude of about 40,000 feet. So this has all added to the Pentagon's wariness of describing in more detail what this object actually is until they can get more information through the debris that they are recovering right now.
And what do we know about the efforts to recover the wreckage of this second object? It looks like NORAD just put out an email a short time ago, and it sounds like they're trying to recover it.
They did. And what we were told yesterday is that the object was shot down over frozen water. So it landed on the ice, essentially. We don't know what kind of condition it's in, whether it is intact, for example. But recovery efforts have been launched. And according to the Defense Department, they have been able to recover a significant amount of debris. Now, notably, they still don't know what this object is, where it came from, or even what direction it was headed in or what direction it came from. It is just all very very murky at this point, but they do say that the FBI is going to be taking the lead on analyzing the debris. If that sounds familiar, it's because just last week we saw that another Chinese spy balloon, I should say a Chinese spy balloon because we don't know what this one actually is, was shot down, also being analyzed by the FBI. But right now, there are just so many more questions than answers, Jim.
So the FBI is on the case now, thank goodness. Now they'll have no more time to worry about Epstein and Joe Biden's son's laptop, et cetera, et cetera. Well, here we are towards the end of the show, and now we're going to go back to, we got a person here, you won't believe it. We have a eyewitness account of shooting down one of these mysterious objects, and I believe it is near the Skinwalker Ranch. This gentleman, Carl Crusher, he's got some really good stuff, talks about petroglyphs and things like that in Arizona. Got a huge following. Just started watching some of his stuff. Apparently, he has a friend or acquaintance up in the area, Nevada, near Area 51, that has some land, and apparently they were a witness to the shooting down of one of these objects. It's kind of hard to hear. Again, this is not what the news is reporting, but at least somebody's reporting it. Have a listen.
Hi, Kelly. How are you?
Good.
I just called you a minute ago, but I wanted to actually record all of it so that we could document it. Because I feel like this is like breaking news with everything going on with stuff flying over our airspace and them talking about UFOs and shooting down spy balloons and things. And so Jeff called me this morning and said that you bumped into him on up by Mount Wilson Ranch, and had some kind of a crazy sighting this morning in the sky. So I wanted to try and see if you would recount that story for me.
Okay.
So where were you? Where were you standing on the? Were you at Mount Wilson Ranch, or were you just nearby? Or
I live on Mount Wilson Ranch, and I was up above my property, walking my dogs, and I heard, every morning we watch for jets, and I heard a military jet. So I'm looking at the sky, and the dogs don't like the military jets, and they're getting a little antsy. And I see a passenger jet go east and a passenger jet go west. And then I see this F-18, and he's pretty low. And as I'm looking for the other fighter jet, which there's usually two, I look off to the south sort of way, and there's a big white ball in the sky. And I'm looking at the fighter jet, and I'm looking at the big ball and wondering what the hell. And then it's like a blue kind of streak goes through the jet stream, and that white ball just blew up, vaporized. And then I'm thinking, did I really see that? Is this a practice run? What the heck is going on? And then I think, where's this guy's wingman? And then I think, where did all the junk from that thing that just blew up fall? And
right.
Going 3,000 miles an hour.
So you saw the jet flying, and then you saw something leave the jet and go through one of the passenger airliners' jets.
Anything. I did not see anything leave that jet.
Okay.
And but I did see a bright blue streak through the contrail from the one passenger jet. It was blue, almost like a prism kind of a look. And then that white ball blew up, and I didn't hear anything except the jet.
It makes you wonder if it was some kind of a smaller projectile or ammunition, or if it was like a directed energy shot at the balloon or something.
I don't know if it could have been a bow and arrow. I don't know. Laser. I don't know. It was just, It was just weird. It was just not something you see
So
in the morning on the dog walk.
people are really going to want to know the details. Can you just describe exactly like what you saw when you saw it like burst or disappear? And if you could really describe the shape of it before it popped or whatever happened.
It was round. It was round and white. And when it blew up, you could see, I saw one, like a piece of streamer fly, but the rest of it, it just kind of made a puff.
Right. That does sound like a balloon, like a weather balloon burst.
I don't know what it was.
Yeah.
It didn't, all I could see was the big white ball.
Fascinating. Then so other than the one jet fighter, once you saw it burst, you say you didn't see anything fall other than the little stream that seemed to come off.
It came off and it was blowing in the wind. Nothing really, because I looked then, I'm watching it thinking, holy moly, but I did not see anything fall to the ground. And then about 5 minutes later, a big military jet, or it was an airplane, four engine airplane flew over where the jet was, and they turned and went south. So I guess they went to Nellis. I don't know.
Yeah, so turning south would go right towards Nellis and Area 51, that whole area.
Yeah.
And was that
just one guy? They never go in ones. It's always a two.
right?
It's weird.
And the types of the variety of the airplanes zigzagging through and involved in it seems really bizarre.
Well, I thought it was kind of weird because here comes the F-18 and there goes a passenger jet and a passenger jet, and I'm wondering, can they see him in any of this? Because that ball thing was right over there. So I don't, possibly two whole plane loads of people saw something too, I don't know.
Yeah.
It was kind of weird.
Jeff, you were saying that Clark, that he saw it too. He saw a different one that had shorter wingspan and a big body. And then, so we're getting like different shapes of aircrafts that are coming through right after this thing.
Yep.
But nobody sees any debris or anything fall out of the sky. So maybe once this video gets out, if we can share it around, we can do maybe another follow-up interview.
I have to say, it's definitely interesting. The lady knows what's going on. What do you think? They're not talking much about what those other objects are. A lot of speculation, they're UFOs. And then, of course, there's more and more UFO sightings going on in the world right now. So we'll have to see. Keep looking up in the skies and keep looking for the elusive truth. And we'll see you next week. And with that, God bless. Take care. We love you. And it's awesome. We had Larry on the show again today. And we will have him on next week. See you then. And thank you for going down the rabbit hole with me today. Bye-bye.